Good morning, everyone. It's great that we are meeting here again for another session of Together We Learn. So the whole idea of Together We Learn started off as an internal learning session for the team to understand beyond the numbers that we crunch here or the algorithm that we crunch for our customers. We wanted people to learn more about the other aspects of economics, world economics, local economics, and also the financial world as such, right? And typically it happens every Friday for the internal team, so that we have an internal discussion and a learning session for ourselves. And every Saturday at 11, moving forward, it will be on YouTube Live. Right, and it's a new setup that we're trying to do just to see how good it might be for the end audience to consume this, because these sessions will also be recorded and will be available in our YouTube channel. Right. So today's topic is curated by our co-founder and chief of growth, which is Sagrika. So Sagrika curated something that she is passionate about, something that she knows quite well, which is fast fashion and the economy, right? So today, even though I am the one who's presenting this across to you, this was curated by the team member so that we can all consume it better. All right. So thank you again for everyone who's joined in, and let's get started. So fast fashion and economy, it's a very interesting topic, mainly because it's something that we all end up seeing. There is not even a single day that we don't end up having an influence of this in our lives. From the ads that we end up seeing to the shops that we end up noticing on the drive to work or to home, it's all, everyone talks about fast fashion, right? But how many of us do know about its impact on the economy? So that's where we decided that let's have a quick conversation about fast fashion and the economy. And again, this comes at a time when India has taken a huge milestone where Dior did its fashion walk, or a fashion, like a show in Mumbai last week, and which is a huge deal for the Indian economy, mainly because now the international brands, which are Dior and others, are not fast fashion, so they are starting to notice us, which means they'll, instead of them reselling it through another vendor, they will directly try to be in the Indian market, right? And which is a big deal, because you would have all seen the crazy memes about Zendaya and Gigi Hadid and all of them being pampered by the paparazzis. So those kind of things happened last 10 days back, and that's why we thought it's important for us to talk about fast fashion and the economy. So these are the different topics that we're going to cover in this particular session. So let's get directly into it. What is fast fashion? Fast fashion is a business model, right? It's a very simple or a very beautiful business model, which has beauty. There is beauty in it, but at the same time it is tainted heavily by a lot of gray areas, right? And today, when we talk about economy, these gray areas need to be patched up or needs to be mended so that it is sustainable for us to be living in a world with fast fashion side by side existing, right? So pretty much what fast fashion does is it replicates catwalk trends and high fashion design. So for instance, if Dior was doing that particular fashion walk here, within the 24-hour period or 48-hour period, they make a replica of that instantaneously, so that a cloth brand which was selling a designer cloth for $1,000, let's take an example in dollars, they would then sell it for $50, right? And this happens at mass production, right? Which means when they're producing it at mass, they end up cutting down on heavy on cost, which is as simple as Amazon versus our kirana walas out there, right? Amazon acquires products in bulk so they can give more discounts, whereas kirana walas can't do it. So that's a similar concept when it comes to mass production. And then finally, making sure that it goes to retail, goes to people like us who can consume it faster, right? And when the demand is high. So when we are excited to see this thing that, for example, there's a slide later on where we see Kim Kardashian wearing something and we are like, oh wow, I would love to wear that too, but then it might be expensive because it's Kim Kardashian wearing it. But in fast fashion, they make it cheaper and they get it to us on time or faster. So what happens is, this is how the mass production happens, right? So these pictures does not show the beautiful marketing websites that these brands have. This shows the reality of how the products are acquired with no sense of sourcing. Like the products are acquired not with greatest quality of material, nothing. They just acquired in bulk and they just kept and they just go ahead producing more and more, so that more and more people can end up buying it, right? So and before we go deeper into fast fashion, you should know about the other term, which is high fashion. This was very new to me when Sagarika spoke about this yesterday. High fashion is known in the world as haute couture, which is nothing but high sewing or high dressmaking, right? So where people do they put effort into it. They put effort into making the fabric to make it more exclusive, custom-made garments, which has a very unique story and design attached to it, right? For instance, from what I've understood, Dior has a very strong relationship with Indian designers, especially with this one NGO who does a lot of artisan prints, right? And they support that. So there's a lot of story behind the designs that they release. Now, and it typically takes a longer period. It takes 21 months for them to source the material, which has to be top notch so that it is sustainable. It stays longer, right? If you guys have noticed, when we buy products which are a little bit more expensive, they do tend to stay longer unless we don't like put them through a vigorous testing scenario of destruction. Otherwise, it's going to be it stays for longer. So these products takes around 21 months for them to acquire, make, design, and everything, and it comes out during different seasons. So if you remember, while I was a kid, when I used to go to these clothing shops, I used to only go once a year. So when I used to go there, they used to talk to us about, hey, December winter collection, right, or summer collection, or spring collection. So those kind of things happen in high fashion, and it's typically done by brands like Chanel, Gucci, Dior, etc. Right? So these are the catwalk shows that we're talking about, where they make these different kinds of prints, right? So now, economics of fast fashion. Now let's just move away from high fashion. Let's go back into the topic itself, focus there. So economics is quite simple, how they made it work, right? And let's not forget that all of this is happening for the last 25 odd years, right? And it's been booming in the last 25 odd years. And the reason is because of the efficient supply chains, right? Again, it's made efficient mainly because they cut corners heavily. I'll speak more about it in the second point, where supply chain is not just about you getting the product from the warehouse to our house, right, when we order it. It also involves sourcing, procuring. There's a lot of process involved in it, right? And the fast fashion brands have mastered on this particular concept, like how to procure and get it out faster, right? And now how they do it is through a quick response manufacturing methods, which means they would cut corners in multiple different places. So one such thing is quality, right? So there's a concept in textile called thread count. So they would ignore the thread count variable. More the thread count, more longer the product will stay in our cupboards, right? Or will withstand more wear and tear. But with fast fashion, that's not the case, right? They cut corners around all these things, and then they start acquiring these products, building these processes, and then finally, for these processes to be implemented, they heavily depend on low-cost labor from like countries like Indonesia, India, for instance, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and other places where 85 to 90% of the workforce who are in this are women, and they end up having to work for cheaper rates, right? Which is what they exploit heavily, and that's where the biggest gray cover is on. Again, companies which do it, that's why I said we all are exposed to it. Primark, which is a US-based retailer. Then there is H&M. We all know that. Shein, which is not there in India as a store, but then it's popular across the world. And then obviously our king of the game, which is Zara, who kind of pioneered this entire space to begin with. Alright, if you guys have any questions, please do drop it in the comment section on YouTube. We are more than happy to take it up and answer it via that itself. Alright, now coming into a little bit more on why they exist, right? So the fast fashion industry is very, very competitive, right? Because they want to make quick bucks, high profitability in a very short span of time, which means they compromise on two different things. Number one is the value proposition, right? Which is the worker value proposition, and then the customer value proposition, which is on both sides. It's important that we need to have a balance between both. So since it's being mass produced, on a worker side, there's very, very poor standards of living, right? And there are some amazing videos out there by Johnny Harris. You guys should check them out, where he talks about how companies like Uniqlo and others, they outsource their product to China, where the fast fashion happens, and then China indirectly pushes their vendors pushes it down to companies in North Korea, right, where it's extreme conditions, no work-life balance. And when I talk about work-life balance, we're not talking about 1 hour extra compared to your day. It's like 18 hours, 19 hours of just working, right? And in dungy or dungeon-like places and stuff. And the other side is mass consumption, which means people want to consume more, so they don't wear it for longer periods of time. There are studies which says that people when they buy products from fast fashion, they only wear it 3 times a year, right? And then they just dispose it, which means when they dispose it, it becomes an environmental issue, which I'll talk about it in a quick second. Now, strategy that they pretty much deploy is they try to make sure that what the retailer wants, the demand is there for, is met by the manufacturer immediately. For instance, let's just say during winter, everyone wants to wear, they need winter clothes, right? Now adding the winter collection into it and trying to push it out for a cheaper rate will make it sell it faster, right? So this is how they do it, and they do it at a very hyper localized effort. Like for instance, every month, what is the most happening trend that's happening, right? So if people are moving more towards, let's just say clothes which have a lot of wool or suede in it, then they will switch to that, right? Those kind of things is what they predominantly take as strategy. And then the quick response of providing this, like preparing this in these sweatshops and other places so that it comes into the production line faster, right? By reducing the time, right? That's something that their heavy strategy is. So they try to cut down on each and every layer so that how faster can you do it. And one of the examples that we took, if you hear it, you'll be like mind blown, right? And finally, it gives great deals for people who want instant gratification, where they can get these products delivered to them within like the same day or within a few days, like 7-day delivery, 3-day delivery. And shopping is in fact is a high for a lot of people. People get excited. They feel like a sense of achievement when they get that box, like a gift, like it's like they are themselves gifting something to themselves, which is something that is the emotion that's taken out. So that is something that these companies strategize on. Now the labor concerns, there are two major concerns that you have to look into: labor and then environmental. On the labor concerns, sweatshops, which is nothing but these dingy shops with no work-life balance, no good let's just say any kind of employee welfare metrics, nothing, right? I've had the opportunity to see a few of them back in my hometown, and it's really bad, right? It's like 100 people sitting in like a small square feet of area doing the same thing again and again and again. So it's really bad, and they sell huge amount of clothing for so little value. Hence, these companies who are employing them also don't have any margins to give away, right? I've had a personal experience, like it's a first-hand information. I can't reveal the sources, but I've learned that people make products for around anywhere between 40 euros to 100 or 120 or 150 euros. But all that these big brands do is just take it out of their packing, keep it on the shelf, and it immediately becomes 1,200 euros, right? So those kind of things are happening in both ends of the spectrum. But here, that 1,200 euros is also not there because it's much more cheaper. It's made for much more cheaper rate. And then finally, these companies who get the deal, like how I said in China, they get the deal, but then they outsource it to other companies who are more or less like if their country is not letting them have kids and women work in these places, then they'll push it to other countries where these laws are not even applicable, right? And they have the craziest kind of conditions that they work with, and majorly this happens in Bangladesh, China, India. And the wages, if you listen to, it's like 40 rupees per hour, or I think it's 40 rupees per day, if I'm not mistaken. I can check that data and I can come back. But it's around 58 cents at least in India that these sweatshops ideally provide. So this is how these centers are, and this is one of these centers that I saw was something like this. And this is a very interesting cartoon, which is nothing but 60% of the clothes, I mean these clothes are made of 60% of cotton, 20% of sweat, and 20% blood, mainly because they're put through very bad conditions. And they also have a lot of exposure to dye and other things which are not of great material, like great quality, which means their quality of life keeps decreasing. The number of years that they could live keeps decreasing because they're exposed to these chemicals which are of not great quality. Now, environmental impact is fashion industry is the second highest polluting industry in the world, right? Which means around 4% of the global gas emission is produced by the fashion industry, and which is more than shipping and aviation. And again, who's the first is none other than the oil companies, like I don't want to name them, but those oil companies, right? So, and again, around 70% of the pollution or the emissions happen upstream activities, which is at the production level, preparation, sourcing, not more or less at getting the products to our house, but before that, which happens at these companies' end, right? And like we all would have studied in, I think in economics only, where we would have spoken about freshwater pollution, which happens because of the dye making industry. And this has been an issue even in Tamil Nadu. There are places in the outskirts, like in cities near Madurai and other places, where they have these dye making stores and stuff, where they end up polluting the nearby water resources heavily, right? And again, they have to use a lot of water to make these clothes, right? And 60% of the clothing here are derived from plastic, because why care about the finest material? No, because you're only going to sell it. Your aim is only for the people to wear it for 3 times. Right? As a company, you only want them to wear it for 3 times and then come back to the website again and buy. Hence, that is not there. And like 93% of these fashion companies, they don't pay like proper living wage, right? Which is very sad. This is a little bit more of the data. If you guys want, you guys can pause it and check that out. Now, coming to not everything is grey. There are good things that's also happening, and it's picking up slowly, which is slow fashion, which is nothing but the opposite of fast fashion. Doing things slowly, doing things based on people's demand. People ask for it, then we will make it, instead of making it in bulk and then trying to push it around the world, right? So that is also happening, and these clothes end up having a larger usage life because they are made with better quality fabrics, and again they've given a lot of thought into how you treat the people, the environment, the animals. So the exact opposite, like if you look at it. And then the slow fashion makes sure that the products, when you're making, like how I said, thread count, so the thread count and everything is kept at the highest value so that it stays for longer, so it doesn't come back into landfill. Most of these fast fashion clothes end up going into landfills, right? Landfill is nothing but you don't know where to throw them, you can't burn them, so you end up pushing it into the ground, right? Which is not great because like I said, 60% plastic. Where will it degrade, right? So this is how it is, and if you see, the great thing about this is it's around 8.3% annual growth rate, which is, it is happening, but it might take more time. And again, most of the fashion industry, fashion players have switched, right? Like I've learned recently from a friend of mine saying that Louis Vuitton has a great sustainable policy that they're building at the moment, right? Again, I haven't gone into it. It's just a second-hand information that I have. So similarly, these brands are also trying to bring up, like H&M itself has its own sustainable product line. So a lot of people are starting to shop from that. And if you go to H&M, to their counters, they'll tell you to give back the old clothes so that they can recycle, right? Those kind of initiatives, they are doing it, but more needs to be done, which is where we are looking into it. Now, one final thought process, like a case study on what it is. So design theft is nothing but big or small companies, they start stealing these products from big designers, right? So when they walk on the ramp walk on the fashion week or wherever, they immediately take it and they sell it as their own, right? Which is basically nothing but a design theft. There's nothing original that they did, they just ripped it off. And which, because of design theft, a lot of these companies go through a huge amount of loss. I know that Nike has an entire IT division which just checks the internet to see if there are any duplicate Jordans and others circulating in the market, right? And one of my friends used to work for that company where they used to scrape and cross check, right? So, and again, finally coming to intellectual property theft, which is basically is what happens there, and it's very difficult to control because it happens in countries like China, India, where we don't even know, like it's very difficult to find these places if you have to come and track them down. And this is a small example of a design theft that happened, I think a couple of years back, where Thierry Mugler's dress, which is around $3,500, is something that Kim Kardashian wore for an event, and immediately within 24 hours, the same dress Fashion Nova released it for $50, right? And Fashion Nova being such a large and heavily followed brand, people love it. But then for us to get this product, it would have gone through a lot of those gray areas, right? So that is something that we have to remember. This white screen, we wanted to deliberately put there saying that there is hope, and that is only if we all start taking conscious decisions and write our own ending to these kind of problems, where I know we can't completely eradicate it, but could we reduce it by 20% or 30%, right? And if so many people reduce it by 20-30%, then eventually that 8.3% which you saw for slow fashion will start increasing, which means more and more brands would be excited to do products that are slow fashion because they're seeing that the market has a growth, right? Because all these brands end up doing it for revenue in the end of the day. So that is something that I would urge everyone to just have a think about. And that's about it.